welcome our guest.
Good evening. How are you this evening? I'm very well, although I have to say I will apologize for my raspy voice. I'm not contagious, but I am recovering from pneumonia. So it's been a tough 2 weeks. But anyway, did everyone enjoy their Thanksgiving? Yes, wonderful. Well, good evening, and let me wish you a Merry Christmas. And happy holidays to everyone. My name is Alisa Dupuy, and I am here today as a representative of the 19th century. And today, I would like to talk to you a little bit about Christmas traditions. So I'll start a little bit about myself. I was born in 1846 near Philadelphia. Come in. And I was born into an area rich in German traditions, many of which we're going to discuss tonight. I came from a wealthy family, so I was sent to boarding school and finishing school in London, where I met my future husband, Bernard Dupuy, who was also abroad. We married in 1866, and we had 3 lovely children. So come in. So in any case, while I was traveling with my husband in England, I learned the most extraordinary facts about our very British custom of having tea. And because I came from a family of English descent, I've always had a great love of tea. And this evening, I have brought for you my hot Christmas spiced tea recipe. So, if you wouldn't mind passing these about. If you could just take one per couple or a couple of friends and then sort of let them make their way to the back, that would be wonderful. Thank you. So did you know that tea has been in use since 2737 BC, and that it was the Chinese who were responsible for its export to Europe? Legend has it that the Emperor Shen Nung was out traveling with his entourage when they stopped, and he told the servants to boil water just for drinking, because he was scientifically minded. And on that day, a few leaves from a nearby bush fell into the boiling water, thereby creating a brown liquid, which this scientifically minded emperor was wont to try. He found it refreshing, and voila, the custom of tea drinking was born. And tea drinking was first very popular in mainland Europe before it ever reached the shores of England. But King Charles II of England and his wife, the Portuguese Infanta Catherine de Braganza, are credited with popularizing tea in England. However, it is the Duchess of Bedford, Anne, who has sort of created the afternoon tea that we all enjoy. How many of you like afternoon tea and enjoy that on a regular basis? Well, dinner time in the early part of the 19th century was at 3 o'clock. But little by little, the bon ton, the beau monde, the upper crust, were pushing the dinner hour back until it was 6 o'clock. And the poor Duchess of Bedford suffered from a sinking feeling in the afternoon and decided that she would revive herself with tea, a bit of cake, invited a few friends, and thus the tradition came to be. Now, the Duchess of Bedford is lady-in-waiting to Queen Victoria. And if I mention Queen Victoria tonight, it is because if she had not been the person that she was, and if she had not married the person that she did, we may not have, come in, we may not have had all the traditions that we have, which I'm going to share with you tonight. Now, the Victorian age is the period from 1837, when she came to the throne, until her death, and this covered a very long span of time. And many of our traditions come to us from this time period. Now, how many of you have ever been to England? Oh, so many. Have you been to the Victoria and Albert Museum? Oh, wonderful. Okay, we're going to talk about that. So Queen Victoria married Prince Albert in 1840. He was her cousin, and they had a very happy marriage and 9 children until his untimely death in 1861, which was a tragedy that the Queen never really recovered from. Albert was her rock, and because she was often indisposed due to childbirth, he often undertook many of her responsibilities, and she would have had him king consort. But the British people would have none of that, because Albert, you see, was German, and the British people didn't like that. He was not even made prince consort until 1857, after 17 years of marriage and all of those children. Yes, but he would have made a very good king. Albert was truly concerned with the welfare of the people. He wanted to modernize England. He wanted to improve the lives of the poor. He wanted to make sure that slavery was abolished. He was very interested in trade, art, culture, the sciences, all of that. In fact, it was he who envisioned and brought to fruition the Great Exhibition of 1851, also called the Crystal Exhibition. Did any of you attend? No? Oh. Well, you missed a magnificent display of England's power and innovation. It was the first in a series of international world fairs that was held in Hyde Park from May to October of 1851. That exhibition garnered a profit of over £186,000. That money was used to found and build the Victorian and Albert Museum, the Natural Science Museum, and the Science Museum, or the Natural History Museum and the Science Museum. And raise your hand if you've been to those museums. So I saw some people say they went to the Victorian and Albert Museum. Yes? So on that site is where, in 1854, a huge Christmas tree was erected. And we have Prince Albert to thank for that. You see, in England, before Victoria married Albert in 1840, and even here in America, people would not have evergreens in their home because it smacked of paganism. And here in America, Puritans actually banned Christmas. And they banned everything that had to do with Christmas. Holly, mistletoe, Yule logs, even caroling, but specifically the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree has now, over time, become a Christianized version of what we connect to Saturnalia, which was a pagan festival in which evergreens were regarded as a magical plant. They symbolized the renewal of life, and people would bring them into their homes when the long, dark, cold season had begun. Because back in the day, some people believed that once the winter had come, it might not return, or the spring might not return. And so they would bring these green boughs into their home to remind themselves that spring would come again, and the warmer summer days. So now, how many of you decorate your homes with Christmas trees and evergreens? Yeah. Mistletoe, holly, any of those things? Now, another magical plant that you may have in your home during this time is the poinsettia. And come in. The poinsettia is named for Joel Roberts Poinsett. He was the American minister to Mexico. We didn't have ambassadors until 1896, but from about 1825 to 1829, Mr. Joel Roberts Poinsett was the American minister to Mexico. He was also an amateur botanist, and he liked to spend his time wandering the back roads of the little villages, and one day he came across this gorgeous plant with its bright red leaves and its golden blossom in the center. And he thought it was so beautiful that he took some cuttings and sent them home to South Carolina, where they flourished. There is a Mexican legend that tells us how the poinsettia became entwined with Christmas and became the Christmas flower. And it reminds me very much of the little drummer boy. What was the little drummer boy's problem?
No gift for the kid.
He had no gift to bring to the baby Jesus. He had no money. And so what did he offer to the baby Jesus?
His drumming.
His drumming, yes. So this reminds me of that. According to the Mexican legend, there was a very, very poor little girl. She was on her way to Christmas Mass, and she wanted to bring something as a gift for the Virgin Mary. And she had nothing. But as she walked along, an angel appeared before her and told her to pick some weeds that were growing by the side of the road. She was dubious, but she of course did what she was told. She picked the weeds, and as she entered the church, she was very sad and ashamed. But as she placed her weeds upon the altar, they magically transformed into the plant that we see today. Now, the poinsettia has become synonymous with Christmas, but it also has its own special day. December 12th is National Poinsettia Day, and it was named in honor of Joel Roberts Poinsett, who died on that day in 1851, the same year as the Great Exhibition. And shortly after that, a Mr. Albert Eck from Germany emigrated to America, and his family ended up emigrating to California, where they started a monopoly on the poinsettia industry. And they found many creative ways to insert the poinsettia into America's psyche as the Christmas flower. So in your minds, is it the Christmas flower? Yeah. Absolutely. So, moving along, we actually have the Germans, not only Mr. Eck, to thank for many of our traditions. And as I mentioned earlier, according to his ancient Germanic origins, Prince Albert brought a Christmas tree to Windsor Castle in 1841. And little by little, not only English magazines, but also American magazines began to put illustrations. This is Godey's Ladies Book, and these would be printed each month. This one is January 1879. I know they're in not great shape, but that's okay. This is April 1884. And at the end of the year, all the issues from the year would be combined into a book. And a lady would have that book, and in it you'll see pictures of fashion, color plates. Yeah, I see you looking at the color plates right now. There are recipes, poetry, stories, child-rearing tips, embroidery, patterns, all sorts of things. And so a woman would have this book at the end of the year to refer back to. And in that book was an illustration of the royal family putting up their tree. So if we could just maybe take one and pass it back. If you could take one and pass it back, and we'll get them going down the rows. Here you go. And as this illustration appeared in American magazines, wealthy American families wanting to emulate the royal family began to have Christmas trees. This is not to say that Christmas trees had not existed in America before that time, because, as I mentioned to you, I grew up in an area where there had been much German immigration, as well as who came to help the British fight during the American Revolution? No, help the British fight. The Hessians, yes, the French helped us. The Hessians were mercenaries who were hired by the British, and many of them actually stayed after the war, and they had their German traditions. But Victoria and Albert definitely popularized the Christmas tree for Americans, to the point where at the end of the century, the end of the 19th century, people were building their mansions with large bump-out bay windows, which were perfect places to put the Christmas tree. Now, the Christmas tree where's my book? Is a festive focus for the exchange of gifts, but that was not always the case. In the past, the gift giving was generally for the servants or maybe small children. And the tree would be decorated with natural decoration. So you might have pine cones, you might have popcorn, strings of cranberries, beribboned bags of nuts, maybe. Sometimes little toys would be attached. And in many of the northern countries, they would also put real candles on the tree. And of course, you would keep a bucket of water near your tree, just in case. So you'll see that the tree is on a table, and if you look at the picture of the royal family, that is how they did it. They would set the tree up, and then later on the table was where they would set up the creche. German glass blowers came up with the idea of doing hand-blown glass ornaments for the trees. And these were status symbols in America until the 1880s, when they began to be mass-produced commercially. Does anyone remember Woolworths? Yes. And the boxes of Christmas ornaments that you could get there? Yes? So one of the popular ornaments to put on the tree includes spun glass and the candles I mentioned, but also candy canes. And did you know that candy canes were initially all white? So the story goes that in 1670, in the Cathedral of Cologne, there was a choir master who was trying to organize the children and the animals into the living creche, the living nativity scene. Anyone who works with small children, or small children and animals in combination, knows that this is like herding cats. So he got the idea of going to the local candy maker, who typically made peppermint sticks for the children, and they were white. And he asked the candy maker, could you put them in the form of the shepherd's crook, since we're talking about the nativity. And this was very popular with the children. The parents loved it because it kept the children quiet. And they also made good decorations because they could easily be hung from the boughs of the tree. Later on, to be commercially relevant, the candy makers began adding a red stripe, and then other colors, and then other flavors. So how many of you have other than just white? You probably don't even have white. So until about 1900, the candy canes were white. And we know that because Christmas cards of the time always showed white candy canes. Now, Christmas cards are another Victorian commercial invention. How many of you still send Christmas cards? About half. So Christmas cards came about in 1843 when Sir Henry Cole, who was one of the organizers of the Great Exhibition, he was also one of the founders and the director of the Victorian and Albert Museum. He was not looking forward to having to hand write out all the hundreds of Christmas greetings that he was planning to send. And fortunately for him, he was able to afford to have a Christmas greeting printed. And he sent this out, and obviously it became very popular. The reason that Christmas cards became popular in America is threefold. First, up until 1855, if you sent something to someone else, you could ask the recipient to pay for the postage. You also had to go to the post office to pick up your things. But that changed. After 1855, the post office required the sender to pay the postage. They also started offering free delivery, so you no longer had to go physically to the post office to get your mail. And at that same time, the steam printer was invented that allowed people to print quite cheaply many cards all at once. And there were many women who engaged in making Christmas cards, and others, holidays as well, but particularly Christmas cards. Kate Greenaway, Frances Brundage, Ellen Clapsaddle. But Christmas cards reached their apex with the arrival of a German immigrant by the name of Louis Prong. He came to America in 1850, and by 1875, his designs were the premier Christmas cards of America. And I have examples to show you. So we have Kate Greenaway designs, Louis Prong designs. So if you could just pass those back, and they'll make their way around. So coincidentally, the advent of the Christmas card occurred in the same year that Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. Yes. How many of you cannot possibly get through the Christmas season without seeing or hearing something about A Christmas Carol? It's iconic. And A Christmas Carol, what was so important about Dickens' Christmas Carol was that it solidified the idea of Christmas as a family-oriented holiday with a feast, a Christmas feast, with caroling, and with parlor games. And so it became just ubiquitous for everyone. Another literary event happened 20 years before that, in 1823, with the publication of a poem that would come to crystallize our idea of Christmas. And do you know what it is? The Night Before Christmas, yes. Do you know who supposedly wrote A Night Before Christmas?
Clement Moore.
Yes, Clement C. Moore. However, there is a little bit of controversy about this. He claims to have written it, but he didn't publish it until 1823. There is a family that claims that their ancestor, Henry Livingston, is the actual author of the poem from 1818, and that Clement C. Moore copied it. So, we'll never know. But I bet you can all say it with me. The Night Before Christmas. Are you ready?
Yeah.
'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mom in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. And a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen. And there they are. No Rudolph yet. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. Looks like my father, actually. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Very good. Give yourselves a round of applause. Now, do you know who did the original illustrations? Thomas Nast. And he gave us the illustrations that really became iconic for us as the classic Santa Claus. Here we go. If you could pass these down and around. Now, at the same time that poem was written, there was a Prussian writer by the name of E.T.A. Hoffmann who wrote a story called The Nutcracker and the Mouse King. And in 1892, the Russian composer Tchaikovsky decided to use that story for his Nutcracker Suite ballet. Now, how many of you would not think that it was Christmas if you didn't get to see the Nutcracker? So nutcrackers are German, and they are traditionally for good luck, but also to scare away evil spirits. And another way that people had over the centuries to scare away evil spirits was to sing. And during certain holidays, specifically around the different solstices, the change of seasons, they would create huge bonfires and dance around the bonfires and sing. Sometimes they would wear costumes, other times not. Little by little, this evolved into Christmas caroling. And eventually, instead of singing at all of the celebrations, caroling became more concentrated and connected to the season of Yuletide or Christmas. And now wassailing or caroling is part of the season. And I would say most of the Christmas carols that you sing today were either written or revised during the Victorian period. There are a few Christmas carols that were written in America. So let me see if I can start the first line. I heard the bells on Christmas Day. Very good. That's an American one. It came upon a midnight clear. That one. And then, oh, little town of... There you go. So, but most of the other ones were originally English. And they were rewritten. So I did bring, for tonight, and I'm trying to find mine. Did you see mine? It says Eliza's copy.
That one pile to the right is poinsettia.
Oh, I see it. Okay, yep, this one's mine. Okay, perfect. All right, would you mind passing these up? So I thought we could sing a few Christmas carols to get ourselves in the mood. But also, I will be expecting you to dress appropriately for Christmas. And I thought I would show you a little bit about the Victorian fashions. Because during my time, we have, do you know what this is called? The bustle, very good. So you may remember around the time that I was married, was around the time of, it was just after the Civil War, skirts were full and supported by a crinoline, 360 degrees round. But little by little, all the decorations started moving towards the back, and women wanted to show off their flowers and their ribbons, and so we had to have different foundation garments. So let's talk a little bit about foundation garments. So first of all, we'll start with the mantle. So this, we'll pretend that her neck is not coming through her thing here. So you see how this jacket is formed to go over the bustle? All right, so the first thing that you have to wear is your chemise. So right here, can everybody see that? See that right here? So this is either a combinaison or a shift. And it goes all the way to the bottom because it's connected to your pantaloons. So they can either be separate or connected. This one's connected. Okay. Do you see the pantaloons here? Okay. What do you notice about them? Let me hold it up for the people in the back. What do you notice? There's nothing in the middle. Why would that be? So you can, yes, you can use the facilities. Now, that is the first garment that you have to wear. Then, what is the important garment that a woman of my time would never be seen in public without?
Corset.
A corset, very good. So, I will show you the corset. Okay, so here we have a corset, and this part right here is called the busk. So this allows you to get into the corset by yourself if you don't have a lady's maid. And it laces from the top to the middle and comes up from the bottom to the middle and then can be pulled. And as you can see, you could pull the ties like this and then tie them around your waist. So in order to get the shape of the gown, now this is a morning dress, so you would wear this on Christmas morning, but then when you go visiting for Christmas Day, you would change into your walking dress or visiting dress. And in order to get the shape, we have a couple different things. We can use a bustle pad, or we can use a bustle cage.
That's insane what women put on.
Now, I'm not sure if you can see it, but do you see this string right here that goes around the thighs? And then there's a strap that goes around the waist. Do you see that? Yeah. Okay, so that strap here and the ties around the thighs keep it from shifting so that it stays in place. Now, this is a lightweight moire gown, but if you want to have something a little more substantial, then you're going to have to use a different kind of bustle. And the one that I'm wearing today, and let me see, I'm going to grab a chair. So gentlemen, avert your eyes. Okay. So we have the corset, we have the combinaison, we have the corset, we have the bodice, we have the underskirt, we have the overskirt or the apron, we have the petticoat, we have the combinaison, and I can't go any higher than that. Okay? So, in order to get the right shape, I'm going to wear what we call the lobster tail. Does it look like a lobster tail? So, everyone says, how do you sit? So when you sit, it just folds up on itself. I don't even have to do it. It does it all by itself. So, now I've probably shocked you all unbelievably. Thank you, thank you. So now you know how to dress appropriately for a Victorian Christmas. So does everyone have their song list? Okay. So I'm going to need your help because... All right, let's see. We're going to go back to number 1. Come, all ye faithful, joyful, and triumphant, oh, come ye, oh, wait. Come ye to it's very low. Come and behold him, born the King of ages. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Christ the Lord. Sing of angels, sing in exultation. Oh, sing, all ye citizens of heaven. Glory to God in the I can't sing tonight. The next one we're going to do is Silent Night or Stille Nacht, which was written by an Austrian just after the Napoleonic Wars in 1818 and set to music by his friend. It is the most popular and well-known Silent Night, Holy Night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin, mother and child, holy is so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly Silent night, holy night, shepherds wake at the sight, glorious stream from heaven o'er, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. That has been translated into 300 languages. Ready to show off your French and your Latin? We have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Quel est l'objet de tout ce chant? Quel vainqueur, quelle conquête mérite ces cris triomphants? Gloria in excelsis Deo. In excelsis Deo. Bravo, bravo. Give yourselves a round of applause. I hope that this has gotten you into the spirit of the season and the reason for the season. And I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight to hear a little bit about Christmas traditions. And if any of you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much. Merci. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
You discussed the fashion and the traditions. How are the meals different for a holiday than they would be for another place's meals on a Sunday?
So Christmas dinner, especially in Europe, usually lasts a very long time. So people spend several hours. In England, of course, you know we have Christmas pudding. And if you've ever seen A Christmas Carol, you know that Mrs. Cratchit does her best to make a Christmas pudding. And there would often be a goose or a turkey and lots of different assorted things. However, if you were in a very poor family, you might not be able to afford all of those things. So you might have a chicken instead of a goose. You might have one accompaniment instead of 5 or 6. You may not have a very large Christmas pudding or a cake or what have you. So, and of course, if you were very poor, you might not be able to afford the oranges and the lemons and the cloves and the cinnamon that would go into wassail, which is like a hot drink. You might not be able to afford that because those were special things that came from far distances, which were not available to those who didn't have a lot of money. Yes?
I'm listening to a podcast, The Gilded Gentleman.
Yes?
And the gifts the children got at that time, they were thrilled to get oranges.
Yes.
And this is a candy, so what would the children have gotten during your time?
So oranges are very popular if you can afford them, and also because of the form of the Christmas stockings, it was also really nice to be able to put the oranges at the toe of the stockings. Sometimes children would get coins. They might get a penny. They would get little dolls, little wooden toys, usually socks or some kind of knitted something. Little girls would often get things that would reflect the fact that eventually they would be running their own household, and little boys would get toy soldiers and things like that, so very gender-specific things. A lot of mechanical toys, very popular in the 19th century. Wind-up toys, china dolls. So they would have a china head and china hands, maybe china feet, but a cloth body, and the eyes would actually have eyelids that would go up and down. So that was a special treat for a wealthy little girl to get a china doll with beautiful clothes. Yes.
How did the coal in your stocking become available?
Well, of course, we all have coal. That's how we heat our stoves, and many people, if they've not transitioned to gas, are still using coal. And so if you're naughty, you would end up with some coal in your stocking. At least we would tell the kids that, to make them behave. Yes?
The tradition of making a list to Santa, when did that come about?
So I think that is a more recent tradition. In the 19th century, we don't really do that. I don't think the children write lists. I've never heard of anyone writing a list.
Adults exchange gifts too at the time?
Sometimes, yes, but it might only be one. So we don't generally have 20 or 30 gifts to open. My husband and I usually will exchange one gift. I don't know if you've ever heard of the story of the Magi, the Christmas Magi. And so she sells her hair to get him, and he gets her a comb. So we might exchange one gift, but we usually give the kids 2 or 3 gifts each, and that's because we're a wealthy family. Most children might get a stocking with a few little things and then maybe one gift, which would be more typical. Yes?
Yes, Santa Claus wasn't in the picture at this time.
So, yes, he was. so the tradition of Father Christmas, Père Noël, Saint Nick, these all come from an actual saint, Saint Nicholas, who was, I believe, Greek from the 4th century, and he became, or maybe it was Turkey. He was known for saving some girls who had no dowry, and their father was going to sell them because he had no dowry to marry them off. And St. Nicholas saved them by throwing gold up into the house, I suppose down the chimney, into the stockings that they had that were drying by the fire, and in this way, he provided the gold that was needed. So St. Nick and all the other Père Noël, I'm sure the Italian one,
Baba Noel?
yes, Baba Noel, and so all of those sort of all come from Saint Nick. So there has been, and then of course Father Christmas, which is all tied into Yuletide and the Lord of Misrule, and all of these sort of combined. And then in the beginning of the 19th century, people started writing stories and poems about Santa Claus. And then we had the poems and the stories and the illustrations. So the 19th century has been a wonderful time for the growth of Santa Claus. Yes. Anyone else? Yes.
Where did you get that dress?
So I had a wonderful seamstress by the name of Christine Hall, who unfortunately now lives in Norway. But I have over the years had many of her gowns, and she does a fabulous job, especially considering that I've never met the woman. So to be able to sew, does anyone here sew? So to be able to sew something for someone without trying it on them or fitting them is amazing. Yes, she did a very, very good job. This was actually this was the second gown I purchased from her.
So you just give her your size? You just give her your measurements?
Yeah, I just gave her my measurements, and she made me 2 gowns. She made me one that was a combination day dress, or no, it was a dinner gown and ball gown. So it had 2 bodices, 1 skirt, and then this for a walking gown. Because, have any of you ever been to Cape May? Mm-hmm. So back in the day, they did Victorian Cape May, and there were lots of activities. There was a tea dance and a ball and all sorts of things, and we would go for the weekend, and yes. So this...
They dressed up for that?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Look at me. Do I look like I would go to Victorian Cape May without getting dressed up? Honestly. So... Well, thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. And I want to wish all of you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a Happy New Year, and everything. And please, everyone, try to stay well. Try to stay well this season. Thank you, especially you.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you